Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Crowd Chatter podcast. Today this is supposed to be what would have been the second iteration of the work to do category of Bubble Watch. However, since I didn't do one last week, this is actually the first week of my actually doing this. So this is the work to do category. If you guys have not already seen the lock and should be in videos this week, I recommend you watch those before you watch this. But anyways, this was supposed to be, and yes, you do not see my face. I am nowhere to be on here. There just is not a good way of showing me in some section of the screen along with this right here. So, unfortunately, it's just my voice. I am as a ghost. I am in somewhere. Okay, anyways. Um, so this is the work to do category. These are teams that are right on the bubble, right on the edge. Either you're just in or you're just out. So these are teams, all of which really need to get some wins together if they want to make the tournament. They need to keep winning, win some big games. Some teams will have some big opportunities coming up here. And we start with the ACC, and I have a very easy one to start this, and that is Virginia. The Virginia Cavaliers are easily a work to do team for me from the ACC, as their conference record is actually solid. It's not too bad. I believe they are 8-4, 8-5. I believe in the conference actually 8-5. I believe is what they are, and I believe their overall record. Let me see if I look here. Yes, they are 14-9 overall, and are they have a 14-9 record, and they're 8-5 in the conference. They don't really have a lot of outstanding wins. They lost because they lost to Navy. They got creamed by Houston. They lost to Iowa. They did beat Providence, which is a huge win for Virginia, but still that loss to Navy looks really ugly, and that really obviously hurts them. They lost to James Madison, which is really bad. So that significantly hurts them. They've lost to Clemson. They've lost to North Carolina, Wake Forest, NC State, and then also Notre Dame. So they have some not great losses, but that Providence win definitely stands out, and they have that Providence win for them obviously is a standout win, and really other than that, and Virginia doesn't really have another big win on its resume. They have beaten Clemson, so they've split a series with Clemson, and really that's it. So, they beat Miami, Florida. So they don't really have a lot of big time wins, which is really something that Virginia lacks and that they seriously need. So I think that's a big one for Virginia. Now, a team that I demoted to this category, I would have had Virginia last week. I did forget to do this one last week, so I'm doing basically both weeks together. I would have had Virginia in last week. I will keep them there this week. This week, I would not have had North Carolina. However, this week I do, mostly just because they don't have a good win on their resume. They have some wins, but they don't have like a big time win. Because yes, their record is solid. I mean, they're 16-7, which is not bad. And they are 8-4 in the ACC. But then you look at their resume, you look at the teams that they have beaten, and they've beaten pretty much no one. Their best win, honestly, is probably at home against Michigan. And trust me, that's not a great win. The way that we have played this season, that is not a great win. And other than that, they don't have anything else other than that. And so, in a ACC conference where Duke is really the only good team, you got to win pretty much every game you can. And so that's a killer for North Carolina to get creamed like that at home against Duke. And then obviously, because it's Duke, they'll have another shot at them later in the season. But that's just a really disappointing game for North Carolina to get bombed like that at home uh, against the Blue Devils. And another team that I demoted from the ACC to this category is Florida State. They have lost a bunch of conference games as of late. They have been struggling. They're down to 6-6 now in the conference. They've lost back to back to Florida State, Clemson, as well as Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, both of which are not good teams. Now, they have beaten Duke, so that is huge, and they have a season sweep over Miami, Florida, which is also huge. And they have beaten Louisville, but like I said, they have lost to Wake Forest twice now. They got swept by Wake Forest. They've lost to Florida. They got demolished by Purdue earlier in the year. They've lost to Syracuse. They've lost to South Carolina. So they don't. They have some bad win. They have some not bad wins, bad losses, but they have some good wins as well. So it sort of kind of evens itself out, but I don't think it's enough for Florida State. I think they're in the work to do category. They need to get some wins down in order to put them into consideration for a tournament spot. Another team I'm going to put in this category with them actually gaining some recent wins and beginning to get their record to at least decent. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with the same team I was going to do before, and I'm going to stick with Clemson. Now, this team's record is not great. They are 12-10 within the conference, and their conference record is not very good. They don't really have a lot of great wins either. They have beaten Virginia. They've beaten South Carolina, but they've lost to Miami, Florida. They lost to Virginia in the second game. They lost to Notre Dame. They lost to Syracuse. They came up short on the road against Duke. So if Clemson really wants to get into the tournament, they're a borderline work to do team. I don't even know if I would put them in this section, but I think they're bordering that line of work to do. They have a lot of work to do if they want to make the tournament. So I really think for Clemson, they really need to get some wins here quickly and keep winning. Otherwise, I think they're really just out of it, and they don't have really much of a chance at that point if they can't start winning games right here and right now, because there's not really a lot of time left in the season, and if they can't start winning now, when are they going to start winning? And other than that, I would have had Clemson last week as well. Other than that, there's no other teams I'm putting into this category that I'm adding. Everybody else really. The only other team I consider is Virginia Tech, but they don't have any good wins, and they're 13-10. So I guess you could say they're saying, no, I'll put them in here. They have work to do. They need some big wins. Virginia Tech, they're 5-7 in the conference. They are also they're 5-7 in the conference. They're also not. There's not a lot of great wins for Virginia Tech. They lack the wins that they need. They don't have any. They have a couple not great losses on their resume as well. They did beat Notre Dame, so that is something to look at. But they've fallen short to Miami, Florida. They've beaten Florida State. That's a good win for them. So they do have some, but they're just not enough, I would say, for this Virginia Tech team to really, for them to really be near the tournament. They've beaten Maryland on the road, which is nice, and they demolished St. Bonaventure, but they've also lost at Dayton. They came up short against Duke, lost to both Memphis and Xavier. So a couple missed opportunities for this Virginia Tech team. They're borderline, kind of like Clemson. They're a borderline work to do team. I'd probably actually put them ahead of Clemson, but they're a borderline work to do team. They have, like I said, they have a lot of work to do, but anything's really possible. So I'll leave them in here, but there's a lot that needs to be done for them to get to the tournament. And now we head to the Big 12, which there's an easy team I'm going to put in from the Big 12 in this work to do category, and there's only two teams that'll actually come from this conference. The first one is Oklahoma. They've really had some struggles as of lately. Oklahoma State, their big time rivals, actually are banned from the tournament this year. They will not be making it, no matter what they do. Oklahoma, however, can. However, Oklahoma has not done well within the conference. They have lost to Oklahoma State. They lost to Baylor. They beat Iowa State, which is a nice win. They've been swept by TCU, though. They lost a chance against Auburn. They did beat West Virginia, but they've also lost to Kansas. They got swept by Baylor. They lost to Texas. So they don't really have anything great with on the wins in the wins category within the conference. They've lost to Butler at home, which is not good. They did beat Florida and they did beat Arkansas, which are both good wins. And they've lost to Utah State, but they beat UCF. So it kind of goes all over. I think they're right on the bubble, squarely on the bubble, especially at 13-10 now. They've lost a bunch here in a row, lost 3 straight, going from 13-7 to 13-10. And their next game is Texas Tech, so it does not get easier for them. But they have a lot of opportunities to up their resume. So this is a huge opportunity for Oklahoma to be a lot better. And another team that is right in the bubble is West Virginia. They have lost a bunch of games within their conference as well. They have really mightily struggled, and if they want to make the tournament, their conference record has got to get better. They are currently 2-7 in the conference, and they have lost to Marquette. They beat Pitt. They lost to Clemson. Pitt's not a good win. They did beat UConn, so that is a huge win for West Virginia. Being UConn at home, beat UAB's actually had a solid year this year, so that win will look good. And their only 2 conference wins are Kansas State and Oklahoma State. So they have actually lost. I think, actually 7 straight games. They were once 13-2. Now they are. Yeah, they've lost 7 straight. They are now 13-9. Once 13-2. That is not a good streak, and not a streak you want to continue. So West Virginia, they have a stretch here of Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. I think all those games are must-wins for West Virginia. They cannot lose one of those, because then they go into Kansas, TCU, another game against Iowa State. Why is that ranked? They're not ranked. But then they go into another stretch here of Kansas, TCU, another game against Iowa State, and then Texas, and then they finish with Oklahoma and then TCU. So they have a huge stretch here where they need to win some games. So they're on the bubble. They need a way better conference record than 2-7. And losing 7 straight doesn't help their case either. But they need to win some games, and they need to win some games right now. So that's it for the Big 12. Don't really have any other teams. The only other team I would consider really from the Big 12 is maybe Kansas State. And I look at their resume. They are 12-10 this year. They have lost to both Arkansas and Illinois. Had chances against both. Lost to both. Lost to Marquette. They beat Nebraska. Nobody cares. Beat Wichita State. They've lost to Oklahoma and Texas and West Virginia, TCU. So they beat Texas Tech, which is a good win for Kansas State. That one will that win will look nice on their resume, along with a win against Texas. Those are both good wins for Kansas State. And as of lately, they have beaten both Oklahoma State and TCU. So they have some nice wins within the conference, but there's nothing on their non-conference resume other than maybe Wichita State that looks good for the Wildcats. So I'll go with Kansas State on there, but they're a borderline. They're kind of like Virginia Tech and Clemson. They're probably a little bit better than those two, though, but they need to get some more wins if they're going to make it to the tournament. And now I go to the Big East, who they have a lot of bubble teams as well. I will have had both of these teams for Bubble Watch last week. Oklahoma and West Virginia. We've had both of those as teams last week. I would have had both of those as teams with work to do. And Kansas State, I'm adding this week actually. And I go now to the Big East, which I start actually with Creighton from the Big East. I'm borderline considering that team to be a should be in team for the tournament, along with the next team I'm going to mention. But Creighton, they have a loss to Colorado State, and Colorado State has been very good this season. They lost to Iowa State, another team that's been pretty solid. The Arizona State loss at home is not good, but they've beaten Villanova and BYU. BYU struggled lately, but they've beaten BYU. They've also beaten Marquette. They did get creamed by Villanova in their other game against the Wildcats, but they did beat them at home, which is nice. They've lost to Butler. They've beaten St. John's, so they have some good wins. They've also beaten UConn. They have some good wins. They have some not so good losses, which is why they fall in this category. Like I said, it kind of evens itself out, all the different wins and losses. So Creighton, I'm gonna leave right there. I would have had Creighton in this category last week, and this is where they remain. Seton Hall is the next team that I'm going to have in this category. They have had a monumental collapse at the end of the season. They would have been a lock, honestly, if they had continued to play the way that they were at the beginning of the year, and then they just continued losing. They fell short to Ohio State. When they played Ohio State, they just fell short. They did beat Michigan on the road, which is a huge win for them. Michigan has struggled, but that's still a good win for them in Chrysler Center. They beat Cal, which is not special, but they still beat Cal. They beat Texas. They beat Rutgers. They fell short to Providence, as well as Villanova. They've beaten UConn, which is a nice win. They fell short to Marquette twice. They've won and lost. They split with St. John's, so they have some good wins. Like Creighton, they have some good wins. They have maybe not the greatest losses necessarily. So Seton Hall, they have some work to do, I'd say. I mean, I'd say if the tournament were to happen today, they'd probably be in, but there's still things that Seton Hall needs to get done, wins that they need to get if they're going to make a tournament. And then another team from the Big East, I'm going to do St. John's. This team is same conference record as Seton Hall. They're 5-6 in the conference. They are 13-9 overall. And St. John's, they have some work to do. They've lost some opportunities. They've beaten both Georgetown and Butler as of lately. Both suck from Big East. They fell short to Providence, which is unfortunate, twice. They've lost to Villanova. They did beat Seton Hall by a ton on the road, which is good. They fell short to UConn, though, which is unfortunate. They lost to Kansas. They lost to Pitt, which is not good. And they fell just short to Indiana. But they have won pretty much every other game that they have played. They have not, and they've lost a couple games, but they've all been to solid teams. So St. John's, they just need a signature win, and they have a huge opportunity with that coming up in their next three games as they play Villanova, UConn, and Xavier in their next three. The first two of those, Villanova, UConn, both being at home. So those are huge opportunities for St. John's to get big time wins and get their team some signature wins on that resume to try and boost them into the tournament. And as for the other three teams, being DePaul, Butler, and Georgetown, not putting any of those teams in here. I would have had these three teams last week for the work to do section. And now we go to the Big Ten. The Big Ten is a loaded conference, very top heavy. Really, pretty much everything in the Big Ten is absolutely loaded. But the first team I'm going to start with work to do from the Big Ten is going to be Rutgers. Rutgers has a solid resume. They just got a huge win at home, big time win at home against Michigan State. Absolutely destroyed them. They fell short to DePaul, but it was a road game. But they fell short to DePaul, which is bad. They've lost to Lafayette and UMass, both of which are not good. But they beat Clemson, so that's something to say. They have a huge win against Purdue. That is going to be massive for them down the road. They did lose to Seton Hall on the road. They beat Michigan at home. They did lose to Penn State, which is not good. They beaten Iowa though. They lost to Minnesota, which is unfortunate. So you can kind of see as I'm going through here. And of course, I just talked about their huge win at home against Michigan State. So you can see what I'm saying about Rutgers. They have great wins. They have some great wins. They have some really bad losses. So they are squarely on the bubble. They need to win more big time games. And there's no bigger opportunity to win more games than right now. They have Ohio State, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Purdue all coming up, and then a road game against Michigan, and then Wisconsin yet again along with Indiana come March, and then Penn State to end their season. So loads of opportunities for Rutgers to increase their resume, and their record in the conference is 7-5, so it's not bad. Their conference record is good, and it is a good Big Ten conference, which is nice for Rutgers. But the more wins they can get in the Big Ten, the better. And here comes the time where I have to talk about this team. Yeah, we're on the I'm putting them in here. Here they are, the Michigan Wolverines, in the Big Ten from the Big Ten, 11-9, 5-5 in the Big Ten. They are in the work to do categories, squarely on the bubble. Massive expectations for this team, and they weren't even close. They have fallen major league short of all of those expectations, and it just has not been good for Michigan. The beginning of their season was an absolute failure. Lost to Seton Hall, got destroyed by Arizona, got destroyed by North Carolina, lost at home to Minnesota, then lost to UCF on the road, then lost to Rutgers. I mean, it couldn't have gotten worse for Michigan, and then lost to Illinois. But as of late, they have been starting to look a lot better, as they do have a road win against Indiana, which is a huge win for them. They also have a win against San Diego State, which is nice. UNLV is okay this year, so that doesn't look too bad. But they need more wins. They need more big time wins on that resume, and they have opportunities still to do it. I mean, they do play Penn State on the road, which is nobody cares, but they have Purdue and Ohio State both coming up here soon, along with Iowa and Wisconsin, a home game against Rutgers, then Illinois, and then they have another game against both Iowa and Ohio State, and then they got their home game against Michigan State rescheduled for March as well after it got canceled due to COVID, along with that Purdue game that was also rescheduled because of COVID. So big opportunities for the Wolverines. If they can win some of those games, and especially these two home, they have 3 home games against Purdue, Ohio State, and Illinois, and then even Michigan State. They can win even really 2 of those. It would do wonders for the Wolverines to get them into the tournament. And another team that I'm going to put in the work to do category, I would consider Maryland, but their conference record is just too pathetic, and they're below 500. And even this team is very marginal and iffy to put in here, but I'm putting in Minnesota. They are 2-9 in the conference. They have been very, very bad. And so, obviously, with a 2-9 record in the conference, Maryland with a 3-9 record in the conference, you gotta win a conference game. You have to win a conference game, and they have Nebraska and Penn State both coming up here. Those are games you have to win. Obviously, you cannot lose to either one of those teams, neither of which they have lost to. Their only two wins in the conference come against the Wolverines earlier in the year in December. And then their other win in the conference actually comes against Rutgers at home. And that's their only two wins in the conference. So obviously, a lot of work needing to be done for Minnesota if they want to make it to the tournament. They got to win some more games within the conference if they want to have a chance. But I still put them in this category mostly because they have a chance. They can make it. Uh, and so if you're wondering if I'm going to put Northwestern in this category for work to do, they do have that win on the road against Michigan State, which is that's weird. I don't know how they beat Michigan State at Breslin Center. Um, but Northwestern, not a great conference record, not a great non-conference slate. They didn't beat a lot of good teams. So I would have put Northwestern here if they had more like actual wins, but they don't really. And so these are the three teams I would have had from the Big Ten work to do before. So they remain in the same section as before. Now I go to the Pac-12, where there's actually a lot of teams from this conference I'm probably going to be putting in there. Some have some good records, some really don't. I would have had Oregon in this category this week, but they've won a couple more games, and I'm comfortable with putting them in the should be in category by this point. The other teams I'm going to put in here, though, first one I'm going to do is right here, and that's Colorado. Their conference record actually is surprisingly not good. They're 6-7, but they're also 14-9 overall. They do have that win over Oregon, which does look good. They've lost a majority of their good opportunities to boost their resume. They've also lost to Southern Illinois, which is absolutely deplorable. But they've beaten Stanford. They fell short to UCLA twice and also fell short to Colorado, or not Colorado, to Tennessee. But they are 14-9, and they have beaten a couple decent teams. So I think they're borderline. Looking at their resume a little more, I think they're a borderline team. But I would keep Colorado as a borderline work to do team. Another team I'm going to put in this category is the Stanford Cardinal, wherever they are on here. I actually have no idea. But Stanford, oh, there they are. Stanford is the team from the Pac-12 that always seems to be in that work to do section. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know how they always end up in that category, but they always seem to do so. So they're once again in that category. They'll probably be one of those teams that's on the bubble the entire time. They're 7-5 this year. The big thing for Stanford is they have a season sweep of USC, which is absolutely incredible. They have not beaten UCLA or Arizona, and they've lost to Washington this year. But they do have some decent wins, which is what looks good on their resume. They beat Oregon this year. So they have some nice wins, and that's why they are in this category. And then the two teams that I'm kind of waffling about, and I'm actually going to put both of them in here, is Washington and Washington State. Both of these teams have been surprisingly actually pretty good within their conference. Washington, I mean, they look like they're just going to be terrible this year, and I mean they're now 7-4 in the conference. Washington State is 7-3 in the conference. So both teams, I'm not crazy about either one of them. I don't think either team's that special, and honestly, I don't even know if either team will make the tournament. Honestly, they probably won't. But I mean, you look at Washington State's resume; they beat Stanford, fell short to Colorado, but they also destroyed them in their other game at home. Fell short to USC, fell short to Boise State. They've lost to Mexico State. and also lost to Eastern Washington. Washington State's record is 14-7 now, with some bad losses, a lot of bad losses, but they have some nice wins as well, which is why I'm making them a borderline work to do team. And then Washington, they have some not great losses either. But they have some wins that are sort of balancing that out. They beat Stanford this year. They've beaten Colorado. Uh, so they have some wins, but again, these two teams need to win big time games if they're going to make it to the tournament. The SEC, I dropped Alabama from the work to do category. Yeah, I did. I dropped them from the work to do category, so they fall here into the in the should. I dropped them from the should be in category. So now they fall into here. Alabama's team has just been all over the place this year. It doesn't make any sense for Alabama this year. They've just been so interesting of a team, and that's why I put them in this category. They have definitely some work to do. They are 14-7. They have a lot of good wins, but they also have a lot of good losses. They have a lot of bad losses, so they need to get some good wins on their resume so that their their really off resume balances itself out. Another team going to put in from the SEC. Well, we had this team last week, Mississippi State. And also right there is Florida, so I'll put them in there as well. There's a lot of teams in the SEC that are really going to be in this category. But Mississippi State, they have some okay wins. They lost to Minnesota this year, which is unfortunate for them, and also Colorado State. But they've beaten Arkansas, which is a huge win for them. They fell short to Louisville earlier in the year. They've also beaten Alabama, though. They fell short to Kentucky and lost to Texas Tech. But there are some decent wins for Mississippi State. But again, Mississippi State needs to win some big time games. They want to make it to the tournament. Florida, more the same thing. They have some solid wins. They beat Florida State and Ohio State, both of which are good wins. They've also beaten Cal. Fell short to Oklahoma though, and then that loss against Texas Southern just looks absolutely hideous on that resume. They've also lost to Maryland, who's not really that great this year. They've beaten South Carolina and Mississippi State, however. They also beat Oklahoma State. So their record has gotten a lot better. They're now 15-8, which is why they got into this section. But they have still a significant amount of work to do, along with another team I'm going to put on here, which is Texas A&M. The SEC is just a loaded conference. There's a lot of teams that are kind of just hanging around on that bubble. Texas A&M is one of them, and I'm going to do another team here, and that's going to be all the way down here, and that's South Carolina. South Carolina's been getting a lot better. They're a borderline work to do team, but Texas A&M gets in there. Their record to start off the year was really good, but they've just continued to lose game after game after game in the conference. They beat Butler and Notre Dame. Butler's not a good win for them. They fell short to Wisconsin, which was a lost opportunity there. They lost to TCU, which is a lost opportunity. They beat Arkansas earlier in the year, but then they had a stretch where they just kept losing games, and they've lost 6 straight games now, which is just not where you want to be. So they need to get some wins, and they need to start getting some wins right here and right now. And then South Carolina, some decent wins for them, beating Texas A&M, beating Vanderbilt. They've also beaten Florida State, which is decent. Georgetown's not a great win, but they have a decent record as well. They are 13-9, and they have what is some okay wins. So for South Carolina, it's a matter of just getting more wins on their resume, just getting more wins in there, getting something on there so that they can make themselves a viable tournament team. And then there's also Vanderbilt, Missouri, Ole Miss, and Georgia. Those teams, Ole Miss's record is not great. Vanderbilt's not really, and they don't really have great wins. So that's it for the SEC. And now we move on to the other category, which is going to have a lot of teams in here. So we're going to start with the first one that I have, which is Memphis. Memphis, like Michigan, has been a major disappointment this year. They need some better wins. They just don't really have anything to go off of other than a win against Alabama. The more wins for them, the better. I'm trying to go through this fast because I'm actually eating dinner soon. UCF is the next one I have on here. They have some nice wins, but their conference record does not look great. And so, once again, for UCF, they just need a big win on their resume. One against Houston would be great. So, if they can get that one, that'd be great. Temple's another team I'm going to have in here. Temple's team, they have a decent record, but their resume just is not where it needs to be. As in the conference, they are 7-3, but they don't really have like a good win on their resume, which is why I put them in this work to do section. Another team I'm gonna have in here is Saint Bonaventure. Saint Bonaventure, they had high aspirations beginning of the year, mightily have struggled. They need to start winning some big time games. They play in the Atlantic 10, so maybe a win against Davidson would be good for them. St. Louis is another team I'm going to have on here. St. Louis, they have a good conference record, and really that's about it. So they need a big time win on their resume. I'm also going to put Loyola Chicago in here. Um, Really, from those conferences, there's more. That's more of just a conference of which is a one bid. A team who wins the tournament is a team that will end up being in. Loyola Chicago, however, has a pretty decent conference resume or conference record and a decent resume in and of itself. So they'll have some opportunities. San Diego State is another team that's on the bubble here. They have some nice wins as well. But the more the merrier for San Diego State. They've lost a couple, which is not good for them. BYU's lost a bunch of games here, which is why they're in this category. Um, so I put BYU in this section. I drop them from the should be in category to here. Another team from the WCC I'll have in actually is in this section is Santa Clara. And they have been a really big surprise this year. Santa Clara really has been very impressive. They've won a couple games. They've beaten Stanford, I believe, this year. They've also beaten Washington State, which are both really actually nice wins for a team like Santa Clara, who doesn't really get those opportunities other than playing mostly pretty much Gonzaga. But you look, they've beaten Stanford, they've beaten Nevada, they beat TCU, which is also a huge win. They just have a lot of really good wins in non-conference. They've also lost a couple non-conference games, which is why they're in this section. And they've lost to San Francisco and St. Mary's and Gonzaga, which are the only good teams really in that conference. So Santa Clara is really going to be in this section for the time being. And really, as I look at the rest of the teams, um, there's a lot of teams that you could put in this work to do category, but really there's a lot of teams that like they have great records. You know, their records are fantastic, but then just you look at the teams that they beat, and it's like, well, no wonder their record is as good as it is. They haven't played anybody. The other team I'd maybe put in there is Dayton. They did beat Kansas during the year, which is big, and they are 7-3 in the conference. No, a team I actually forgot is VCU. VCU I'm gonna put in here. Um, Really good, decent record, good conference record. They need some more wins though, and so VCU I'm going to have just in this work to do category. Um, as I said, there's probably more that I could put in here. However, I'm kind of in a hurry, and so I'll just leave this as the teams I have in for now. So I will see you on the next video. I'll probably do a NBA episode possibly tomorrow, going over the standings maybe, or maybe even a college football episode on coaching changes and just a crazy offseason. But that's all I have for this video. I'll update, obviously, all of these categories that should be in, locks, and work to do next week. But that's all I have for now. Until next time, adios, everyone.